I paid for my parents' retirement for 10 years, but they cut me out of their will. The spreadsheet glowed on my laptop screen at 11:47 p.m., each row a monument to my own stupidity. 10 years. 120 payments. $240,000 of my hard-earned money, sent religiously to mom and dad every month so they could enjoy their golden years without working past 65. I'd been so proud of myself back then. Fresh out of college with my computer science degree, landing that sweet software engineer position at Microsoft. 25 years old and making more money than I knew what to do with. When Dad pulled me aside at Christmas 2013 and explained how their 401k had taken a beating in the recession, how they'd have to work until they dropped dead if something didn't change, I didn't hesitate. Don't worry, Dad. I've got this. $2,000 a month, every month. You and Mom deserve to retire. And they did retire. Oh boy, did they ever. European river cruises. A new Lexus SUV. That kitchen renovation Mom had always wanted. Weekly dinners at Ruth's Chris. I smiled every time I saw the Facebook photos, even when my own apartment still had the same IKEA furniture I'd bought as a broke college student. But it was worth it, right? I was investing in more than just their comfort, I was investing in our relationship. Quality time together instead of Dad grinding away at the hardware store until his body gave out. Mom finally pursuing her watercolor hobby instead of working double shifts at the dental office. The golden child, they called me during those early years. Their responsible, successful son who'd made it big in tech. Not like my older brother Derek, who bounced between odd jobs and still lived in the same studio apartment at 32. I should have known something was wrong when Derek started showing up to family dinners more often. When Mom began posting pictures of my two boys, instead of just bragging about my latest promotion. When Dad stopped thanking me for the monthly transfers and started treating them like an automatic utility bill. The truth hit me 3 hours ago in the most mundane way possible. I wasn't even snooping. Mom had asked me to grab her reading glasses from the kitchen counter while she was in the bathroom. That's when I saw the will document spread across the granite countertop I'd helped pay for. Last will and testament of Robert and Margaret Chen. My hands shook as I scanned the pages. Derek's name appeared over and over. The house, Derek's. The investment accounts, Derek's. Dad's classic Mustang that we'd restored together when I was 16, Derek's. Mom's jewelry collection, Derek's future wife, whoever she might be. My name appeared exactly once, in a paragraph expressing their love and gratitude, but explaining that David has always been financially responsible and successful, whereas Derek needs more support to secure his future. I'd memorized those words by the time Mom returned from the bathroom. Sat through another hour of small talk about her book club and Dad's golf game. Hugged them goodbye like nothing had changed. Even made my usual joke about Dad beating me at mini golf again next weekend. But everything had changed. 10 years of sacrifice, 10 years of choosing their comfort over my own financial goals, 10 years of believing I was building something beautiful with the people who raised me, all of it reduced to a single devastating conclusion. I was the reliable one. The one who'd always be fine. The one who didn't need anything from them because I'd already proven I could take care of myself. As I stared at my laptop screen, one thought crystallized with perfect, terrible clarity. It was time for them to learn exactly how much their reliable son had been worth. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's smug face from last Christmas when he'd made some throwaway comment about finally getting what he deserved in life. I thought he was talking about his new job at the car dealership. Now I knew better. By 3 a.m., I was back at my laptop, but this time I wasn't looking at my payment records. I was digging through social media, bank statements, anything that could tell me when this betrayal had been set in motion. What I found made my stomach turn. The original will was dated March 2015, 2 years after I'd started sending money. Back then, everything had been split equally between Derek and me. But there was an updated version from August 2019, and then another from December 2021. Each revision carved away more of my inheritance until I'd been completely erased except for that patronizing paragraph about my financial responsibility. December 2021. I pulled up my photos from that month, and there it was, Christmas dinner at their house. Derek had flown in from Denver with some story about his landlord screwing him over, how he might need to move back home for a while. I remember Dad taking him into the office for a man-to-man talk while I cleaned up dishes like I always did. That's when they'd rewritten everything. While I was loading their dishwasher in their renovated kitchen that I paid for, they were in the next room deciding I didn't deserve a single dollar of the wealth I'd helped them accumulate. But what really twisted the knife was finding Derek's Venmo history. I'd added him as a friend years ago, back when we actually had a decent relationship. His transactions told a story that made my monthly $2,000 deposits look like pocket change. March 2022, thanks for the Vegas trip. Slot machine, $500 from Mom. May 2022, car repairs are the worst loudly crying face, $800 from Dad. July 2022, love you guys. Smiling face with hearts, $1,200 from Mom. September 2022, interview clothes money. Wish me luck. $650 from Dad. On and on it went. They weren't just cutting me out of their will, they were actively funding Derek's lifestyle with money that came directly from my account. I was paying for his Vegas trips, his car repairs, his job interview outfits, probably his rent too. The amount wasn't even the point, though it stung to see them casually throwing around hundreds of dollars to Derek while I'd been buying generic groceries for years to make sure I could afford their monthly payment. The point was the lies. Every phone call where they'd mention money being tight. Every birthday where they'd apologize for my small gift because they were watching their pennies. I screenshotted everything. Derek's Venmo history, the will documents I'd photographed earlier, my own banking records showing a decade of transfers. By dawn, I had a folder on my desktop labeled evidence that painted a picture so damning I almost felt sorry for them. The worst part was my phone buzzing at 7:15 a.m. with a text from Mom, thanks again for dinner last night, sweetie. Dad and I were just saying how lucky we are to have such a thoughtful son. Derek could learn a thing or two from you. Face blowing a kiss. I stared at that message for 5 full minutes. The casual manipulation of it. The way she positioned Derek and me as opposites, him as the screw-up who needed coddling, me as the responsible one who should be grateful for the privilege of being taken advantage of. I knew exactly what I had to do. But first, I needed to understand just how deep this rabbit hole went. I called in sick to work and spent the morning doing what I do best, following digital breadcrumbs. 10 years in tech had taught me that every financial transaction leaves a trail, and my parents had been sloppy about covering theirs. Their bank statements were easier to access than they should have been. I'd helped Dad set up online banking 3 years ago when he was struggling with the website, and apparently he'd never changed the password I'd created, Margaret 1955. Even their security was something I built for them. What I found made the Venmo payments to Derek look like lunch money. January 2023, $15,000 withdrawal, labeled home improvement. March 2023, $8,500 withdrawal, vehicle purchase. June 2023, $12,000 withdrawal, investment opportunity. September 2023, $18,500 withdrawal, family support. None of these matched any home improvements I'd seen. Mom's car was the same Lexus from 2019. And family support was a new euphemism I'd never heard them use before. I cross-referenced the dates with Derek's social media posts. January 15th, 3 days after that first withdrawal, Derek had posted pictures from Cabo with his girlfriend Sarah. Living our best life, he'd captioned it, raising a margarita at some resort that definitely cost more than a car dealership's salary could cover. March 8th, just after the vehicle purchase withdrawal, Derek had posted photos of a brand new motorcycle. A Harley Davidson, gleaming black and chrome. Finally got my dream bike. Sometimes good things happen to good people motorcycle. The June withdrawal coincided with Derek and Sarah's move to a luxury apartment complex in downtown Denver. I'd seen the virtual tour he'd posted on Instagram, granite countertops, mountain views, amenities that probably cost more per month than my entire rent. But September's $18,500 really got my attention. That withdrawal happened on September 12th. Derek's girlfriend had posted a photo on September 14th that made my blood freeze, her hand extended toward the camera, showing off a diamond ring that could have bought a decent used car. She said yes. Ring can't wait to marry my best friend. Derek really outdid himself with this surprise proposal in Napa Valley. I pulled up the Zillow listing for my parents' house just to check something. Purchase price in 1987, $89,000. Current estimated value, $847,000. Add in Dad's classic car collection, 3 vehicles now, apparently, Mom's jewelry, their investment accounts that had been growing thanks to not having any living expenses for a decade, and Derek was looking at inheriting well over $1 million. $1 million that I'd helped accumulate by paying their bills for 10 years. My phone rang at 11:30. Dad's contact photo, the two of us holding up a fish from our camping trip last summer, flashed on my screen. Hey kiddo. Mom wanted me to call and see if you're feeling better. She's worried about you missing work. His voice was warm, concerned. The same tone he'd used when I was 8 and homesick from school. For a moment, I almost wavered. Almost convinced myself there had to be some explanation. Yeah, just a stomach bug. I'll be fine. Good, good. Listen, Derek's flying in this weekend with Sarah. We're having a little family dinner Sunday to celebrate their engagement. Nothing fancy, just the 5 of us. My grip tightened on the phone. Engagement? Oh. He hasn't announced it officially yet. Don't spoil the surprise, okay? But yes, he proposed last month. We're so excited to finally have a daughter-in-law. Sarah's a lovely girl. A lovely girl whose ring I'd inadvertently paid for. We were thinking of maybe doing something special for them, Dad continued. Maybe help with wedding costs, you know. Derek's been working so hard lately, but weddings are expensive. There it was. They were already planning to give him more money. My money, filtered through 10 years of monthly deposits. That sounds great, Dad. Really great. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at my coffee until it went cold. Sunday dinner. A celebration of Derek's engagement, funded by my sacrifice, surrounded by furniture and luxury I'd paid for, in service of a will that had erased me completely. Perfect. I'd have all of them in one room. Sunday arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made everything look perfect for family photos. I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue, the same route I'd taken hundreds of times over the past decade, but today every familiar landmark felt like a mockery. The Starbucks where Mom and I used to meet for coffee. The park where Dad had taught me to throw a curveball. The life I thought we were building together. I'd spent Saturday preparing. Not just emotionally, though I'd practiced this conversation in the mirror until my reflection looked as tired as I felt, but legally. 3 hours on the phone with Margaret Hoffman, the attorney who'd handled my house purchase 2 years ago. She'd been fascinated by my situation in the way lawyers get when they smell a particularly interesting case. Gifts versus loans, she'd explained. That's going to be the crux of everything. Do you have any documentation showing these payments were intended as loans? I didn't. 10 years ago, I'd been a naive 25-year-old who thought family operated on love and good faith, not contracts and legal documentation. But Margaret had given me a roadmap for how this could play out if they refused to cooperate. Family court judges see this more often than you'd think. Adult children supporting parents who then favor siblings in inheritance. It's legally complex, but not impossible, especially with your level of documentation. I'd also done something that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. I'd set up a separate bank account and scheduled the cancellation of my automatic transfer to my parents. After Sunday, after this conversation, the money train that had run reliably for 120 consecutive months was going to stop. Sarah's laugh drifted through the front door before I even knocked. High and musical, the sound of someone who'd never worried about money a day in her life. Through the window, I could see her in the living room I'd helped furnish, admiring what had to be her engagement ring while Mom fawned over it. Derek opened the door before I could knock, and seeing him hit me like a physical blow. He looked good. Healthy. His hair was professionally styled, his clothes were expensive. I recognized the Ralph Lauren polo from their website, $150 retail. His skin had the glow of someone who'd spent recent time on a beach, probably that Cabo trip I'd inadvertently funded. David. Look what the cat dragged in. His grin was genuine, which somehow made everything worse. Come meet my fiancé officially. Sarah bounded over like a golden retriever, all enthusiasm and perfect teeth. David. I've heard so much about you. Derek says you're some kind of computer genius. Software engineer, I corrected, shaking her hand. The engagement ring caught the light, easily 3 carats, flawless clarity. I wondered if she knew her future in-laws were living on their younger son's charity. Same difference, right? I barely know how to use Excel. She laughed at her own joke. We're so grateful for everything your family has done for us. Your parents are literally the most generous people I've ever met. My parents. Being generous. With my money. They certainly are, I managed. Dinner was a production worthy of a cooking show. Mom had made Derek's favorite, prime rib with all the trimmings, served on the china set they bought during their river cruise through Germany. The one I'd seen them post about on Facebook while I was eating ramen for the 3rd night running because I'd been short on grocery money after their monthly transfer. So Sarah, Dad was saying, carving the roast with theatrical precision, have you two thought about timeline? For the wedding? Well, Sarah glanced at Derek, who nodded encouragingly, we were thinking maybe spring 2025. That gives us time to save up and plan properly. Nonsense, Mom interrupted, refilling Sarah's wine glass. Life's too short to wait around. Derek, honey, you know your father and I want to help make this special for you too. Derek actually blushed. At 37 years old, my brother blushed like a teenager getting his allowance. Mom, we couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. We're offering. What kind of parents would we be if we didn't help our son start his married life properly? I set down my fork carefully, focusing on the sound it made against the plate. That's really generous of you guys. Wedding costs have gotten crazy these days. Oh, don't even get me started, Sarah jumped in. My sister's wedding last year cost $40,000, and that was considered modest. The venue alone was 15 grand. 15,000. I repeated the number slowly. That's a lot of money. Not for family, Dad said firmly. We've been blessed to have a comfortable retirement, and we want to share those blessings with our children. Comfortable retirement. Funded entirely by one of those children, who was currently sitting across from his replacement. You know what? I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. I think we should talk about money. Since it's such a blessing and all. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Derek's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Sarah looked confused but kept smiling. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I pretended not to notice. David, Mom's voice had that warning tone from childhood. This isn't really dinner conversation. Why not? We're all family here, right? And family should be honest with each other. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app I'd screenshotted earlier. I was just thinking about how blessed we all are. 10 years of blessings. $240,000 worth of blessings, to be exact. Derek's face went white. David, what are you? I'm just appreciating the blessings, Derek. The way our parents have been so generous. With everyone. Sarah's confusion was almost comical. She kept looking between Derek and me like we were speaking in code, that pageant smile wavering as the tension thickened. I'm sorry, I don't understand what's happening. What's happening, I said, scrolling through my phone with deliberate slowness, is that I've been paying for Mom and Dad's retirement for 10 years. $2,000 a month, every month, since 2013. And apparently, that's made me so financially responsible that I don't need to be in their will anymore. The silence was deafening. Derek's fork clattered against his plate. Dad's face went from confusion to something that looked almost like panic. David. Mom's voice was sharp now. Where is this coming from? Your kitchen counter last week. Your will was spread out right next to the fruit bowl. The same fruit bowl I helped pay for, in the kitchen I helped renovate, in the house I've been subsidizing for a decade. Sarah finally stopped smiling. Wait, Derek, what is he talking about? Your parents have been getting money from David? Derek couldn't meet her eyes. It's complicated, babe. No, it's really not. I turned my phone screen towards Sarah, showing her my banking history. Every month for 10 years. Like clockwork. $240,000 total, so Mom and Dad could have their golden retirement while Derek figured his life out. That money was a gift, Dad said, his voice strained. You offered to help us. I offered to help you retire comfortably. I didn't offer to fund Derek's lifestyle. I switched to the screenshots I'd taken of Derek's Venmo history. Vegas trips, motorcycle payments, apartment deposits. Where exactly did you think that money was coming from? Sarah was staring at Derek now, and her expression was shifting from confusion to something colder. Derek? Is this true? Sarah, let me explain. Because last month when I asked if we should invite your parents to contribute to the wedding, you said they were on a fixed income. You said they couldn't afford to help with anything major. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish. They are on a fixed income. It's just. David helps them out sometimes. Sometimes. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah, let me break this down for you. Every dollar your fiancé has received from his parents in the last 10 years has come from me. That engagement ring you're wearing. I paid for it. That Cabo vacation you posted about. Me. The down payment on your fancy apartment. Also me. Sarah's hand went instinctively to her ring, like she was trying to hide it. That can't be right. I pulled up Derek's Instagram posts on my phone, cross-referencing them with my parents' bank statements. January 15th, Cabo vacation. 3 days after Mom and Dad withdrew $15,000 for home improvement. March 8th, Derek posts about his new Harley. 5 days after they took out $8,500 for a vehicle purchase. Should I keep going? Those withdrawals were for us, Mom said weakly. Home improvements, a new car for your father. What car, Mom? Dad still driving the same Buick. And what home improvements? The kitchen renovation was 3 years ago. I had the receipts for that too, since I paid the contractor directly. The fight was going out of them, and I could see the exact moment Dad realized they'd been caught. His shoulders sagged, and he suddenly looked every one of his 72 years. Sarah pulled her hand away from Derek's. You lied to me. You've been lying to me about everything. Sarah, please, just listen. Listen to what? How your little brother has been paying for your entire life while you told me your parents were broke. She stood up from the table, her chair scraping against the hardwood floors I'd helped refinish. How you let me feel guilty about my student loans while you were getting thousands of dollars in handouts. It's not handouts, Derek said desperately. It's family. David makes good money, he can afford. I can afford it. I stood up too, 10 years of suppressed resentment finally finding its voice. Derek, I've been living in the same apartment for 8 years because I couldn't save up for a house down payment. I've been driving a 2009 Honda with 200,000 miles on it while you post pictures of your Harley. I've been shopping at Costco and clipping coupons while you take your fiancé to Napa Valley. The room was spinning out of control, and I could see Mom trying to find a way to salvage this. David, sweetheart, we never asked you to sacrifice. You didn't have to ask. I'm your son. I thought I was investing in our family, in our relationship. I thought I was helping you live with dignity. My voice cracked on the last word. I had no idea I was just funding Derek's extended adolescence while you wrote me out of your lives. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Sarah was still standing, her designer purse clutched against her chest like armor. Derek looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. But it was Mom who broke first. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. Derek needed help. Real help. You've always been so capable, so independent. Independent? I laughed bitterly. Mom, I've been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch for 3 years so I could afford your monthly payment. I've been putting off dental work, driving on bald tires, buying clothes at thrift stores. How exactly is that independent? Dad finally found his voice. We didn't know it was that hard for you. You never said. I never said because I thought it mattered. I thought I was doing something meaningful. The words came out louder than I intended. Every month when I clicked send on that transfer, I told myself I was buying your happiness. Your comfort. Your golden years. I had no idea I was just subsidizing Derek's quarter-life crisis at 37. Sarah had gone very quiet, but I could see her mind working. She wasn't just pretty, there was intelligence behind those eyes, and she was putting pieces together. Derek, she said slowly, when you said you'd been saving for the ring. Derek's face crumpled. I was saving. I mean, technically. Where did the money come from? Mom and Dad wanted to help. With David's money. It wasn't a question. Sarah set her purse on the table with deliberate precision. David's money paid for my engagement ring. The silence stretched until I couldn't stand it anymore. I pulled out the printed copies I'd brought, bank statements, will documents, everything. Margaret Hoffman had suggested I come prepared for this conversation to go nuclear. Here's what's going to happen, I said, spreading the papers across Mom's imported lace tablecloth. I've calculated every payment I've made to you for the last 10 years. Principal, plus interest at the current market rate of 4.2%. The total comes to $267,840. Dad's face went gray. David, you can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious. Because here's the thing, I just found out those payments weren't gifts to loving parents. They were investments in a relationship that doesn't exist. They were loans to people who were planning to cut me out of their lives anyway. I slid a copy of their will across the table. December 2021. You remember that Christmas, right? Derek came home broke, and you two took him into Dad's office for a heart-to-heart. That's when you decided I was too financially responsible to deserve an inheritance. Mom was crying now, but I was past caring about her tears. You want to know what financially responsible looks like? It looks like spending Saturday morning with a lawyer, learning about elder financial abuse and unjust enrichment. It looks like documentation proving that every luxury you've enjoyed for 10 years came directly from my account. We're your parents, Dad whispered. You can't sue us. Watch me. I gathered up the papers. I want every penny back. $267,840, paid in full within 90 days. Or I file papers in King County Superior Court and we let a judge decide what's fair. Sarah suddenly spoke up, her voice deadly calm. How much did the ring cost? Derek looked like he might throw up. Sarah, please. How much, Derek? 18,000, he mumbled. Sarah pulled the ring off her finger and set it on the table with a sharp click. I can't wear this. I can't marry someone who built our entire relationship on lies. She looked around the room with something like disgust. This whole family is insane. Sarah, wait. Derek jumped up as she headed for the door. Let me explain. Explain what? How you're almost 40 years old and still taking allowance from your baby brother. How you let me think your parents were struggling while they were secretly funding our life. She paused at the doorway. I need my stuff out of your apartment. I'll send my brother to pick it up. The front door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. Derek stood frozen in the living room, staring at the space where his fiancée had been 30 seconds earlier. Look what you've done, he said, turning on me with sudden fury. She was the best thing that ever happened to me, and you ruined it. I ruined it. The audacity was breathtaking. Derek, you ruined it the moment you decided to build a relationship on money stolen from your brother. It wasn't stolen. Mom and Dad gave. Mom and Dad gave you my money while planning to leave me nothing. There's a word for that, and it's not family. You want to know what the real joke is? Derek's voice was getting louder, more desperate. You act like you're so generous, but you've been keeping score this whole time. What kind of person tracks every dollar they give their parents? The kind of person who just found out their parents have been lying to them for 4 years. I kept my voice level, but my hands were shaking. The kind of person who discovers his family has been laughing behind his back while he ate ramen so they could eat steak. Mom finally stopped crying long enough to speak. We weren't laughing, David. We love you. We've always loved you. Funny way of showing it. I pulled up Derek's Venmo history again. Let's talk about love, Mom. September 12th, you withdrew $18,500 for family support. 2 days later, Derek proposed to Sarah with a ring that cost exactly $18,000. Where did the other $500 go? Derek's face flushed red. That's none of your business. It became my business when you spent my money on it. I scrolled through more transactions. August 15th, love you guys. $800 from Dad. Same day you paid your rent in Denver. July 3rd, thanks for everything. $1,200 from Mom. July 4th, you and Sarah posted from that resort in Jackson Hole. You're sick, Derek spat. Who does this? Who stalks their own family's financial records? Someone who just found out their family has been committing fraud for 10 years. I turned to Dad, who hadn't said a word since Sarah left. Dad, I need you to understand something. Those monthly payments weren't charity. They were based on trust. You told me you needed help to retire with dignity, and I believed you. Dad's voice was barely a whisper. We did need help. You needed help, or Derek needed help. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you two have been running a money laundering operation out of your retirement account. That's ridiculous, Mom protested. We never asked Derek to pay us back. Because he never could. Derek's never had $18,000 in his life, let alone enough to cover rent, car payments, vacation trips, and an engagement ring. I looked directly at my brother. Tell me, Derek, what's your actual salary at the dealership? Derek's jaw tightened. That's personal. Not when I'm subsidizing your lifestyle, it's not. Sarah deserved to know the truth before she married you. How much do you actually make? The silence stretched until Derek finally broke. $31,000 a year. Plus commission. I did the math quickly. So after taxes, you're taking home maybe $2,200 a month. Your rent alone is $2,800. How exactly were you planning to pay for anything without Mom and Dad's help? I was working on getting promoted. For 4 years. Derek, you've been working on getting promoted since Obama was president. I turned back to our parents. This is what you chose over me. A 37-year-old man who can't support himself, let alone a wife. Mom's voice cracked. He's trying his best. His best. I pulled out my phone and showed them Derek's Instagram again. His best includes a $200 dinner at that steakhouse in Denver last week. A $200 dinner that cost more than I spend on groceries in a month. Dad suddenly slammed his hand on the table, making the china jump. Enough. You want to know why we changed the will? This is exactly why. You turn everything into a spreadsheet, David. Every relationship, every gesture, every family moment gets calculated down to the penny. Because I had to. The words exploded out of me. Because apparently I was the only one in this family who thought money mattered. The only one who thought actions had consequences. Money isn't everything, Mom said weakly. Tell that to Derek. Tell that to Sarah, who just found out her entire relationship was built on financial lies. I gathered up my papers again. Money isn't everything, but honesty is. And you three have been lying to me for years. Derek suddenly straightened up, something shifting in his expression. Fine. You want honesty? Here's some honesty for you, little brother. Mom and Dad were going to change the will anyway. Even before I asked for help. My stomach dropped. What? Christmas 2019. 2 years before that version you found. They were already talking about it. Derek's voice had turned cold, calculating. You want to know why? Because you're exhausting, David. Everything with you is a transaction. Every family dinner comes with a silent invoice. I stared at him, then at our parents. Is that true? Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad was studying his hands like they held the secrets of the universe. We never said that, Mom whispered. But Derek wasn't done. They called me that Christmas, after you left. Said they felt guilty taking your money because you made it feel like a burden. Like you were keeping score of every dollar, waiting for payback. The room was spinning. 4 years. They'd been planning to cut me out for 4 years, even before Derek's latest crisis. While I was sacrificing everything, they were already deciding I didn't deserve anything in return. So you knew, I said slowly. Derek, you knew they were planning to change the will, and you still took their money. My money. Derek shrugged. You offered it freely. Freely. I repeated the word like it was poison in my mouth. I offered it freely because I thought I was helping my parents, not funding a decade-long con job. Derek crossed his arms, and for the first time all evening, he looked like the older brother who used to steal my lunch money. Nobody forced you to send that money, David. You chose to play the hero. The hero? Something snapped inside me. Derek, I've been playing the parent for 10 years while you've been playing house with my income. Boys, please, Mom started, but I cut her off. No, Mom. We're way past boys now. I turned back to Derek, everything clicking into place with horrible clarity. You want to know what really happened here? You manipulated them. Christmas 2019, when they first started having doubts about the will, that wasn't coincidence. That was you planting seeds. Derek's smirk faltered slightly. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because I remember that Christmas now. You'd just gotten fired from the sporting goods store. You came home talking about how money changes people and how successful people forget where they come from. I thought you were talking about your boss. I looked at our parents. He was talking about me. Dad finally looked up from his hands. Derek never said anything bad about you directly. He didn't have to. He just had to make you feel guilty for taking money from your transactional younger son. Make you think I was keeping score, waiting for payback. I laughed bitterly. Which is exactly what's happening now, isn't it? Self-fulfilling prophecy. You are keeping score, Mom said, gesturing at my papers. Look at all this documentation, David. Normal families don't. Normal families don't systematically defraud each other for 10 years. My voice cracked. Normal families don't take a son's love and turn it into a slush fund for his brother's midlife crisis. Derek stepped closer, his face flushed with anger. You think you're so much better than me because you got lucky with some tech job. Lucky? I stared at him in disbelief. Derek, I worked my ass off. 80-hour weeks, night classes or certifications, sleeping in my car between shifts when I was freelancing. While you were finding yourself in your 30s, I was building a career. And holding it over everyone's head ever since. I never held anything over anyone's head. I sent mom and dad money every month and never asked for anything in return. Not even a thank you card after the first year. That hit home. I could see it in their faces, mom's guilty flinch, dad's inability to meet my eyes. Derek, though, just kept pushing. You didn't ask for thank you cards, but you expected them. You expected gratitude, recognition, the whole grateful parent routine. And when you didn't get it, you started resenting us. I started resenting you when I found out you were stealing from me. It wasn't stealing if mom and dad gave it freely. With money I gave them. I was shouting now, 10 years of suppressed frustration finally erupting. Derek, you're 37 years old. When exactly were you planning to support yourself? When you're 50? 60? I was getting my life together. You were getting engaged with an $18,000 ring you couldn't afford to a woman who thought your parents were broke. I grabbed the ring Sarah had left on the table. This ring, Derek. This specific ring represents 9 months of my sacrifice. 9 months of me eating peanut butter sandwiches so you could propose to someone you were lying to about everything. The weight of it hit me all at once. Not just the money, not just the lies, but the sheer scope of what they'd stolen from me. 10 years of believing I was building something beautiful with my family. 10 years of choosing their happiness over my own financial security. 10 years of love, weaponized against me. I'm done, I said quietly, pocketing the ring. I'm keeping this as a down payment on what you owe me. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's face had gone from red to purple, and for a moment I thought he might actually take a swing at me. But it was Dad who spoke first, his voice shaking with something I'd never heard before, rage. You will not take that ring, David. Put it back on the table right now. Or what? I kept the ring in my pocket, feeling its weight like a talisman. You'll call the police. Tell them your son stole back his own money. That ring doesn't belong to you, Mom said, her tears forgotten. Derek saved for months. Derek saved nothing. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to a screenshot I'd almost forgotten about. September 8th, Derek's bank account was overdrawn by $347. I know because he posted about it on Instagram, joking about adult life. 4 days later, you withdrew $18,500 for his ring. Derek lunged toward me, but Dad caught his arm. Give me my phone, Derek demanded. Let me see what else you've been stalking. I don't need your phone. You post your entire life online. I scrolled through more screenshots. Here's you complaining about your credit card being maxed out in July. Here's you asking your Facebook friends for financial advice in June. And here's my favorite, August 15th, you shared an article about adult children who still depend on their parents with the caption, "At least I'm not this pathetic." The blood drained from Derek's face. You took that out of context. What context makes that okay, Derek? What possible context justifies mocking people for doing exactly what you've been doing, except worse? Mom was crying again, but these weren't the gentle tears from before. These were the harsh sobs of someone whose world was crumbling. We never meant for it to get this complicated. We just wanted to help Derek get on his feet. For 18 years. I stared at her. Mom, Derek graduated high school in 2004. It's 2023. At what point exactly were you planning to stop helping him get on his feet? It's not that simple, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. Derek's had some bad breaks. Derek's had the same breaks as everyone else. The difference is that every time he stumbled, you two were there with a check. My check. I pulled out another document I printed, Derek's employment history that I pieced together from his social media posts. Sporting goods store, fired for attendance issues. Restaurant server, quit after 2 weeks because the customers were rude. Car wash attendant, lasted 3 months. Insurance sales, 4 months. And now the car dealership, where he's been for 8 months and still can't afford his own rent. Jobs are hard to find, Mom started. Good jobs are hard to find, I corrected. Any job is easy to find if you're willing to work. But Derek's never had to work, not really. Because every time reality hit, you two cushioned the blow with money you didn't have. Derek finally found his voice again, but it came out as a whisper. You have no idea what my life has been like. You're right. I don't. Because while I was working my ass off to support this family, you were posting vacation photos and complaining about how hard it is to be an adult. I looked around the room, at the expensive furniture, the renovated kitchen, the life I'd built for them. But I know what my life has been like. And apparently, it's been a lie. Dad stood up slowly, like his joints hurt. For the first time, he looked every one of his 72 years. What do you want from us, David? Really want? I want my money back. All of it. And I want you to stop pretending this was about love or family or anything noble. I met his eyes. This was about enabling Derek's refusal to grow up, and I was the unwitting bank account that made it possible. We can't pay you back, Mom said quietly. David, we don't have that kind of money. Then you'll figure it out the same way Derek should have figured out his life. Get jobs. Sell the house. Liquidate the investments. I shrugged. Be responsible adults for the first time in a decade. We're 72 years old. Dad's voice cracked. We can't just go back to work. You're 72 and 70, and you're both healthy enough to travel across Europe twice a year. You're healthy enough to golf 3 times a week and take Sarah ring shopping. I gathered my papers again. Figure it out. Derek suddenly grabbed my arm. Wait. Just, wait a minute. What if we put you back in the will? I stared at him. What? The will. What if Mom and Dad change it back? Split everything 50-50, like it used to be. Would that be enough? The audacity was breathtaking. Derek, are you seriously trying to negotiate with money that isn't yours? It's not about the money, he said desperately. It's about family. We can fix this. No, I said, pulling my arm free. We really can't. I stared at Derek for a long moment, processing what he just said. You think this is about the will? Isn't it? Derek looked confused, almost hopeful. I mean, if you're back in it, then we're even, right? The sheer stupidity of it left me speechless. Mom and Dad were watching this exchange like spectators at a tennis match, probably wondering if Derek had just found a magic solution to their problem. Derek, I said slowly, the will isn't the issue. The will is just proof of what you all really think of me. But if we change it back? With what money? I pulled out my calculator app. The house is worth $847,000. Dad's car collection, maybe another $200,000. Mom's jewelry, let's say $50,000. Your investment accounts. I looked at Dad. How much is left in there after 10 years of Derek's emergency funding? Dad's silence was answer enough. So let's be generous and say there's $1.2 million total to inherit. Split 2 ways, that's $600,000 each. I showed Derek the screen. I'm owed $267,840 right now, today. Your solution is for me to wait until you both die to get back less than half of what you stole from me. Derek's face fell. When you put it like that. How else would I put it? Derek, basic math says I should get my money back plus 70% of everything else, just to break even. But honestly, I pocketed my phone. I don't want to wait around hoping you don't blow through the rest of my inheritance funding your next midlife crisis. That's when Mom surprised me. What if we sold the house? All 3 of us turned to stare at her. She was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, but there was something different in her expression. Something that looked almost like resolve. Margaret, Dad said carefully, we've talked about this. We're not ready to downsize. Robert, we're 70 years old and we've been living a lie for 4 years. She looked directly at me. David, if we sold the house and gave you your money back, would that be enough? Could we try to fix this? I felt something crack inside my chest. For just a moment, she sounded like my mom again. Not the woman who'd been lying to me about Derek's expenses, not the woman who'd written me out of their will while spending my money, but the mom who used to make me soup when I was sick and help me with my math homework. Then Derek opened his mouth. Wait, if you sell the house, where are you going to live? What about my room when I visit? What about holidays? He looked genuinely panicked. Mom, you can't just uproot your whole life because David's having a tantrum. Tantrum. After everything that had been said tonight, after Sarah walking out, after the evidence of years of lies spread across their dining room table, Derek called my response a tantrum. Mom's resolve wavered. I could see it happening in real time, the way she glanced between Derek and me, the old patterns reasserting themselves. Derek needed protecting. Derek needed stability. Derek needed his childhood room preserved in amber while his little brother got lectured about being transactional. Actually, I said, my voice eerily calm, I have a better idea. I pulled out the business card Margaret Hoffman had given me, along with a second card I'd hoped I wouldn't need. This is my attorney. And this, I held up the second card, is a private investigator she recommended. Dad's face went white. David, what are you? I'm done negotiating. I'm done listening to Derek whine about his room. I'm done pretending this is fixable. I set both cards on the table. Margaret thinks I have a case for financial elder abuse, but in reverse. Adult children manipulating elderly parents to steal money from siblings. Apparently it's more common than you'd think. We're not elderly. Mom protested. You're 70 and 72, taking money from your son under false pretenses, and giving it to your other son who's approaching 40 and can't support himself. The courts have seen worse, but not by much. Derek grabbed the private investigator's card. Janet Morrison, asset recovery specialist. David, you can't be serious. Janet specializes in tracking hidden assets and financial transfers between family members. For instance, she can subpoena Derek's bank records going back 10 years. She can trace every dollar that went from my account to yours to his. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She can also investigate whether you two have any other accounts I don't know about. Property, investments, maybe some of those European river cruise photos were actually house hunting trips. The look that passed between Mom and Dad told me everything I needed to know. There's more, isn't there? I asked quietly. Dad's shoulders sagged in defeat. The cabin. What cabin? Your grandfather's cabin in the mountains. We bought it from your Aunt Linda 3 years ago. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. We were going to surprise you and Derek with it for Christmas. Derek's eyes lit up. Wait, Grandpa's cabin. You guys bought Grandpa's cabin. I remembered that cabin. Summer trips when I was little, fishing with Grandpa while Derek complained about the bugs and a lack of internet. It had been sold when Grandpa died, breaking Dad's heart because he couldn't afford to keep it in the family. How much? I asked. $200,000, Dad admitted. Your Aunt Linda gave us a family discount. The numbers clicked into place. $200,000, 3 years ago. Right around the time Derek started getting those bigger gifts from you. I looked at Derek. Let me guess. You knew about the cabin purchase. Derek's guilty expression was answer enough. So while I was driving a 10-year-old Honda and shopping at Goodwill, you 3 were making plans for a family cabin that I'd be helping to pay for but wouldn't inherit. I laughed, but it sounded broken even to my own ears. How many other surprises are there? Vacation home in Florida. Investment property in California. Just the cabin, Mom said quickly. David, we swear, just the cabin. But I was done believing their swears. I was done believing anything they said. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret Hoffman right there at the dinner table. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Sunday, but she'd given me her cell number specifically for this situation. Margaret? It's David Chin. I'm sorry to call so late, but I'm sitting here with my parents and we just discovered some additional assets they failed to mention. I put the phone on speaker. A $200,000 cabin purchase from 3 years ago. Margaret's voice filled the dining room, crisp and professional. Mr. Chen, given what you've told me about the timeline, that purchase would have occurred during the period when you were providing monthly support payments. Can you confirm the source of funds for your parents? Dad looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. We took out a mortgage. With what income? Margaret's question hung in the air like a sword. Mr. Chen mentioned you've been retired since 2013. David's been helping us, Mom whispered. So Mr. David Chen's monthly payments were used as qualifying income for a mortgage to purchase property that he was subsequently excluded from inheriting. Is that correct? The legal implications crashed over the room like a tsunami. Derek's face had gone from red to green, and I could practically see him calculating whether his name was anywhere on those mortgage documents. Margaret, I said, still staring at my parents, what does that change in terms of our options? It changes everything. Using someone else's money to qualify for a mortgage while planning to exclude them from the asset creates a clear paper trail of financial fraud. Mr. Chen, I strongly recommend you do not leave that residence until we've documented everything. Derek suddenly stood up. I need some air. But instead of heading toward the door, he started walking toward Dad's office. Where are you going? I called after him. I said I need air. But I was already moving. Something in Derek's panic had triggered every alarm bell in my head. I caught up with him just as he was reaching for Dad's filing cabinet. Looking for something specific? I asked. Derek's hand froze on the drawer handle. Just. I left some papers in here last time I visited. What kind of papers? Personal stuff. None of your business. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Margaret, Derek's attempting to access financial documents in Dad's office. Should I be concerned about evidence tampering? Derek spun around. Evidence tampering? Are you insane? Margaret? I kept the phone pointed at Derek, who was now backing away from the filing cabinet like it was radioactive. Mr. Chen, I recommend securing all financial documents immediately. If your brother has been involved in financial planning with your parents, any documents he might remove could be relevant to your case. Derek's face crumpled. There's nothing in there. I was just looking for some old photos. But Dad had followed us into the office, and his expression told a different story. Derek, he said quietly, just leave it alone. Leave what alone? I opened the filing cabinet myself. The folders were meticulously organized, labeled in Dad's careful handwriting. Mortgage documents. Investment statements. Tax returns. And there, in the back, a folder that made my blood run cold, Derek, loan documentation. I pulled out the folder with hands that were suddenly shaking. Inside were promissory notes, loan agreements, and payment schedules. All signed by Derek. All completely fictional. What the hell is this? I held up a document dated January 2022. Loan agreement, Derek Chen borrows $15,000 from parents for business investment, to be repaid at 3% annual interest over 5 years. Derek wouldn't meet my eyes. I was going to pay it back. With what money? Derek, you make $31,000 a year. I flipped through more documents. Every major gift to Derek had been carefully documented as a loan, complete with payment schedules that Derek had never once met. This is fraud documentation. You three created fake loan agreements to make it look legitimate. Dad's voice was barely audible. We thought, if Derek ever got on his feet, he could start making payments. When? When he's 50. 60. I did quick math on the payment schedules. According to this, Derek should have been making $800 monthly payments since March 2022. Derek, how many payments have you made? Silence. How many, Derek? None, he whispered. But I was planning. You were planning to let these loans sit in default forever while telling everyone what a deadbeat I am for tracking my own money. I photographed every document, every fake signature, every fictional payment schedule. Margaret, I'm documenting loan agreements that appear to be fraudulent, showing a pattern of fictitious lending to disguise gift transfers. Margaret's voice was sharp with interest. Mr. Chen, this significantly strengthens your position. Fraudulent documentation suggests intentional deception rather than simple family financial assistance. Mom appeared in the doorway, her face streaked with tears. David, please. We never meant for it to go this far. We just wanted to protect Derek until he could stand on his own. For 18 years. I waved the loan documents. Mom, Derek graduated high school in 2004. He's been an adult for nearly 2 decades. When exactly were you planning to stop protecting him? That's when Derek finally snapped. You want to know the truth? Fine. You're right, David. I can't support myself. I've never been able to support myself. But at least I don't make everyone around me miserable with my success. The words hit like a physical blow. What does that mean? It means you've been insufferable since you got that Microsoft job. Everything became about money and achievements and showing off how responsible you are. Derek's voice was getting louder, more desperate. Mom and Dad were happier before you started paying their bills, because at least then they didn't have to listen to you humble brag about your salary every Christmas. I stared at him, then at our parents. Is that what you think? That I've been showing off? Mom's silence was devastating. Dad couldn't look at me. I see, I said quietly, photographing the last of the loan documents. Well then, you'll all be much happier when I'm gone. I walked back to the dining room in a daze, the fraudulent loan documents clutched in my hands like evidence of my own stupidity. Margaret was still on speakerphone, and I could hear her typing rapidly as she took notes. Margaret, I said, sitting down heavily at the table where this nightmare had started 3 hours ago, I need you to add something to the file. Emotional manipulation and gaslighting. They've convinced themselves that I'm the problem because I've been too successful. David, Mom started, but I held up a hand. No, Mom. You've all said enough tonight. I looked at the loan documents again, Derek's signature sprawling across page after page of lies. These loans, Derek, when did you and Mom and Dad sit down and decide to create this paper trail? Derek slumped against the doorframe like a deflated balloon. Last Christmas. After Sarah and I got serious. Dad said if we ever got audited or something, the IRS would want to know why I was getting so much money. So you created fake loans to cover up the fact that you've been living off my income for 4 years. I shook my head. Derek, do you understand that this makes it worse? This proves it was intentional fraud, not just family helping family. We were protecting everyone, Dad said weakly. If the government ever asked questions. The government wasn't the one asking questions, Dad. I was. And instead of being honest with me, you created an elaborate fiction to hide the fact that you turned me into Derek's personal trust fund. Margaret's voice cut through the tension. Mr. Chen, I need to ask directly, are you prepared to pursue this legally? Because what you're describing constitutes actionable fraud in Washington state. I looked around the room. At the dining table where we'd shared thousands of meals. At the family photos covering every surface, including dozens from the European trips I'd funded. At Derek, who was staring at his phone like it might save him from this conversation. Yes, I said. I want to pursue this. Mom gasped. Dad closed his eyes like I just sentenced him to death. But Derek finally looked up from his phone with something that might have been relief. Good, he said quietly. We all stared at him. Good. Mom's voice cracked. Yeah, good. I'm tired of this charade, Mom. I'm tired of pretending I'm going to pay back money I'll never have. I'm tired of watching you and Dad twist yourselves into knots trying to justify giving me David's money. Derek's voice was steadier than it had been all night. And I'm really tired of watching David kill himself to support a family that doesn't respect him. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Mom started crying again, but these were different tears, the kind that came with the collapse of carefully maintained illusions. Derek, she whispered, we do respect David. We love David. No, you love the idea of David. The successful son who can solve all our problems with a monthly check. But you don't actually like him as a person. Derek looked at me with something that might have been apathy. And honestly, I don't think I do either. The words should have hurt more than they did. Instead, I felt something close to relief. After 10 years of wondering why nothing I did seemed to matter, why every sacrifice went unacknowledged, why every achievement felt like a burden to my family, finally, I had my answer. They simply didn't like me. Margaret, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, I want to proceed with recovery of all funds, plus interest and legal fees. And I want to do it as quickly as possible. Understood, Mr. Chen. I'll file the initial paperwork tomorrow morning. I hung up the phone and stood, gathering my documents and my dignity. I'll expect to hear from your attorney within the week. Until then, the monthly payments are cancelled, and I'll be going no contact with all of you. The silence after I hung up with Margaret stretched until it felt like a living thing, pressing against my chest and making it hard to breathe. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds, looking at the three people who had shaped my entire understanding of what family meant. Derek was still slumped against the doorframe, but something in his posture had changed. He looked almost liberated. Like he'd been carrying a weight I'd never seen and had finally set it down. You know what's funny, he said, his voice eerily calm. I actually feel better now that it's all out there. Mom whipped around to stare at him. Derek, how can you say that? This is destroying our family. What family, Mom? Derek pushed himself off the doorframe and walked back to the table, sitting down like we were having a casual conversation instead of the complete implosion of everything we pretended to be. We haven't been a family in years. We've been a financial arrangement with holiday dinners. Dad found his voice, though it came out as a croak. That's not true. We love each other. We've always. Dad, stop. Derek's interruption was gentle but firm. Just stop. We don't love each other. We tolerate each other because David pays the bills and I provide you both with a project to fix. He looked directly at me. And David keeps sending money because he's desperate to buy the kind of family relationship he sees other people have. The accuracy of it hit like a punch to the gut. Derek. No, let me finish. Because Sarah was right about one thing tonight, this whole family is insane. But not for the reasons she thought. Derek leaned back in his chair, and for the first time in years, he looked like an adult. We're insane because we've all been pretending David's success doesn't make us feel like failures. Mom's face crumpled. Derek, that's not. It is, Mom. Every month when David's check hits your account, every time he talks about work or his investments or anything he's accomplished, we all feel smaller. And instead of dealing with that like grown-ups, we decided to punish him for it. I stared at my brother, wondering if this was some new manipulation tactic. But his eyes were clear, focused in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. The will changes, the loan documents, even the way we've been talking about David behind his back, it's all been about cutting him down to size. Making him pay for making us look bad by comparison. Derek's voice cracked slightly. And the really sick part. David never once made us feel bad about ourselves. We did that all on our own. Dad was shaking his head slowly, like he was trying to reject everything Derek was saying. Son, you're upset. We're all upset. But this isn't about jealousy. Then what's it about, Dad? Derek's voice turned sharp. Because I've been thinking about this for the last 10 minutes, really thinking, and I can't come up with any other explanation. David offered to help you retire because he's generous and he loves you. You accepted because you needed help. But then what happened? The question hung in the air. Dad's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I'll tell you what happened, Derek continued. Every month when that money showed up, it reminded you that your 25-year-old son was more financially stable than you were. It reminded you that he'd surpassed you in every measurable way. And instead of being proud, it made you resentful. We were proud, Mom whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. Were you? Because proud parents don't secretly rewrite their wills to punish their successful children. Proud parents don't use their son's money to fund his brother's lifestyle while telling everyone how responsible and independent the first son is. Derek looked at me again. They especially don't spend 4 years convincing themselves that their son's generosity is actually some kind of character flaw. I felt something shift inside my chest, not relief exactly, but recognition. Like Derek had just named something I'd felt but could never articulate. The weird tension that had crept into family gatherings over the years. The way conversations would suddenly stop when I walked into rooms. The subtle but persistent message that my success was somehow a burden on everyone else. You're right, I said quietly, and all three of them turned to look at me. Derek's absolutely right. You know what convinced me? I continued, my voice gaining strength. It wasn't finding the will. It wasn't even the fake loan documents. It was the way you all reacted when I started asking questions. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a text thread I'd screenshot earlier. Mom, you sent me this text at 7:15 this morning. Derek could learn a thing or two from you. But tonight, when Derek said he doesn't even like me as a person, neither of you contradicted him. Mom's face went white. David, that's not, we were in shock. No, you weren't in shock. You were relieved that someone finally said it out loud. I looked at the loan document still spread across the table. And you know what? I'm relieved too. Because now I understand why nothing I ever did was good enough. Dad suddenly stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. That's enough. David, you're twisting everything we've said tonight. We never. December 18th, 2019, I interrupted, pulling up another screenshot. Derek's Facebook post, some people think money solves everything. Real family is about being there for each other, not writing checks. Posted 3 hours after I left your Christmas party early because I had food poisoning. Derek winced. David, I was drunk when I posted that. Were you drunk 2 weeks later when Mom liked it and commented, so true, honey? I turned the phone toward Mom. Or in March 2020 when you shared it to your own timeline. The silence stretched until Dad's voice cut through it, rougher than I'd ever heard it. You screenshot our social media posts. I screenshot everything now, Dad. Turns out when your family is lying to you for years, documentation becomes pretty important. I pulled up another image. Here's Mom's Facebook post from last September, blessed to have raised 2 such different boys. One who gives from the heart, one who succeeds from the head. Guess which one I am? Mom's hand flew to her mouth. I didn't mean, that wasn't about you. It was about me, Mom. It was all about me. Every passive-aggressive social media post, every comment about how some people think money is everything, every time you praised Derek for being authentic and caring while describing me as responsible and successful. I laughed bitterly. You turned my good qualities into insults. Derek was staring at the table, but I could see his jaw working. David, for what it's worth, I never asked them to. You never asked them to what? Prefer you. Derek, you didn't have to ask. You just had to be the son who needed saving while I was the son who did the saving. And apparently, needing salvation is more lovable than providing it. Dad slammed his hand on the table again, but this time it sounded desperate rather than angry. Stop psychoanalyzing us. You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, sometimes your success made us feel inadequate. Yes, sometimes we resented taking money from our 25-year-old son. But that doesn't mean we don't love you. Love me? I stared at him. Dad, you've been planning to erase me from your will for 4 years while I funded your retirement. That's not love. That's not even basic human decency. We were going to change it back, Mom said desperately. After Derek got married, after he was stable. When exactly would that have been, Mom? Derek's 37 years old and just lost his fiancée because she found out he's been lying about everything. His idea of getting stable was proposing with a ring he couldn't afford to a woman he was deceiving about his finances. I gestured toward Derek, who was looking increasingly pale. What part of that suggested he was ready for you to change the will back? Derek's voice came out as barely a whisper. I know you won't believe this, but I never wanted the inheritance. Not really. I didn't want to disappoint them by refusing it. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation, but all I saw was exhaustion. What does that mean? It means Mom and Dad spent so much time telling me I deserved their money, I started to believe maybe they were right. Maybe I did deserve it more than you because I needed it more. Derek's laugh was hollow. But tonight, listening to Sarah talk about building a life together, watching her realize our entire relationship was built on lies. I finally understood what you must have felt reading that will. I looked at Derek, really looked at him, and for the first time in years I saw my actual brother instead of the walking disappointment our parents had turned him into. Derek, what are you saying? I'm saying I want out too. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, a check, made out to me for $847. This was going to be my first payment back to you. My entire last paycheck from the dealership, minus rent money I borrowed from my roommate. I stared at the check. $847 wouldn't even cover the interest on what they owed me, but something in Derek's face made me look closer. The signature was shaky, like his hands had been trembling when he wrote it. Derek. I quit the dealership yesterday. After Sarah left, after I realized what we'd all done to you, I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. He pushed the check toward me. I know it's nothing compared to what you're owed, but it's everything I have that isn't borrowed or stolen. Mom gasped. Derek, you quit your job. How are you going to? Figure it out myself, for once. Derek's voice was steadier now. I'm 37 years old, Mom. It's time I learned what my life actually costs. Dad was staring at both of us like we were speaking a foreign language. Boys, let's not make any rash decisions. We can work this out as a family. No, Dad. We really can't. I took Derek's check and folded it carefully, sliding it into my wallet next to the engagement ring I'd confiscated. Because Margaret was right about one thing, this isn't a family problem anymore. It's a legal problem. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app one final time, showing them the screen that had started this whole nightmare 12 hours ago. I've calculated everything. 10 years of payments, compound interest, legal fees, and emotional damages. The total comes to $312,000. The number hung in the air like a verdict. Dad's face went gray. Mom started crying again, but quietly this time, like she'd finally run out of fight. You have 90 days to pay in full, or I file a lien against the house and the cabin. Either way, I get my money back. I stood up, gathering my documents for the last time. Derek, I'm keeping your check. Not because it matters financially, but because it's the first honest thing anyone in this family has given me in 4 years. Derek nodded. I'm going to pay you back, David. All of it. I don't know how or when, but I will. Don't. I headed toward the door, then stopped. Derek, I don't want your money. I want you to build a life you can actually afford. Maybe for the first time, we can both be proud of who we are instead of ashamed of who we're not. 6 months later, I got a text from Derek. He'd moved back home with Mom and Dad, not because he needed saving, but because they'd had to sell the house to pay me back. All 3 of them were working now, Dad at the hardware store where he'd started 40 years ago, Mom back at the dental office, Derek at a construction company where the pay was terrible but honest. The text was simple: Sarah and I are talking again. Slowly. Turns out she respects honesty more than diamond rings. Thanks for forcing me to find out who I actually am. I never responded to that text, but I kept it. Sometimes the best thing you can give your family is permission to stop pretending, even if it costs $312,000 to learn that lesson.